Welcome back, everybody. I'm Sean LaFlock. I'm here with Scotty Hagnes. This is Conversations, Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity. Scotty, looks like you're getting a little post-workout on.
Yep, got my shake here. I kind of coming toward the conclusion of my 20 rep program that we've checked in on periodically. So
Nice. So what do we got here?
well, it evolves eventually downward in reps. So 14, and I'm transitioning now from 14 down to the 8 to 10 range.
Oh,
So feeling pretty good. I've kind of blended the two workouts that were split into one. So it's a bit of a death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing at
yeah.
this point. But in general, still making progress week to
Nice.
week. And so some weighted exercises, it's just, simply more load.
Mm-hmm.
Others, some of the body weight strength things I've progressed to greater complexity or
Yep.
difficulty over time, or range of motion in the case of shrimp squats, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm definitely will say that I'm getting close to the point where it'll be ready to transition to something else, having basically done some version of the same workout now for about 3 months almost.
Yep. And let me ask you this. Is the length of the workouts still pretty consistent, like time-wise throughout the
Yeah,
in training session? What are they usually lasting?
yeah. Not counting, the warm up and prep, it's about 40 to 45 minutes.
Okay. Perfect. So for
Yeah,
those who are saying that they don't have enough time to train, this is probably a viable option. Would you say?
hmm totally. Yeah. And for a lot of folks wouldn't even have to do as many exercises,
Yep.
given that I've, some very bike specific strengths and things. I have those in there as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And
And as I've progressed through it and as the reps are going down, I have to spend a little bit more time warming up. And the early phases was great. I mean, outside of one real easy warm up set, you're basically right to working weight because the reps were so high.
yep.
Now though it takes less time to do half the reps that I was starting with, I have to do a little more warm up now. And so that keeps the time still roughly pretty consistent.
Yeah. And are you doing some low intensity aerobic work along with that
I am. I mean,
throughout the
the
week?
writing skill itself is a fair amount. That's probably 4 to 5 sessions a week of
Mm-hmm.
that, which is kind of cardiac output. I usually use that, but now that the rains have hit and I can't always get out as much as I want, I am doing some recovery circuits where I'll usually do, airdyne a couple of minutes, some dynamic mobility circuit back on the airdyne,
Mm.
kind of moderate range. And then, of course, as we've also talked about the last couple times, I've been playing with those intervals that you shared with me.
Yep.
More for experimentation purposes and
Yeah.
just to get little touches on high end. But these high rep strength workouts with relatively short rests between exercises do definitely build up some kind of anaerobic and aerobic recovery effect in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel like I'm missing higher intensity stuff very much.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, who is missing that, Scott?
Right.
um, Now, you said you might want to transition this into something else. What would that might look like? A traditional kind of body composition work, 8 to 10 reps? Would you have different days where you would actually do it? Like, for instance, like upper body split days or something like that? Or would you stay total body on these?
I am a little bit debating a few of those specifics. Basically, what I've looked at is that I'm treating it a little bit like a sport with an off season. This was kind of early off season work, also allowing me time to address some mobility issues with a fairly high volume.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got 4 4-week phases over the winter that I would call sort of an off or preseason before my first on bike kind of competition starts, roughly April 1st, where I'll want to direct effort there. So I am going to uptick my training, and I'll work through 4 phases. The first one will be kind of easing back into more heavy maximal strength type work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm going to go velocity based stuff. So I'm going to, because I don't know the percentages of lifts, I'm going to use a certain velocity on the big lifts, squats, deads. I think I will bench, just to have something quantifiable in there. And I will work through some of those using that loading, but basically shooting for 80, 85, 90% ish type stuff over the course you load, and then probably more power development
Yep.
in the later ones.
Now, how are you going to track velocity, Scott?
We have a push band, so
Say that again.
I have one of the push bands.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which I've used in the past with clients, and that's pretty solid now. It's a lot more stability and functionality than some of the early ones had. That was always pretty good with the basic barbell lifts. So that way I can kind of keep an eye on fatigue, because I do see that the writing of skill-based CNS training, especially depending on what you're doing, and it takes away from some of the strength and power.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa is true too. I don't want to leave so much on the table training when it's a small part of what I need to be able to do that. It creates a problem there.
Yep. Now it's
so
very
low volume.
Yeah.
Low volume as I can pull off, basically.
Yep. Now, it's actually very interesting that you kind of talk about that, because we're going into something called the CrossFit Liftoff now, where, CrossFit competitors can, or just general fitness competitors or enthusiasts, can film themselves doing a snatch, a clean and jerk, and then a mixed modal CrossFit style workout, and they participate online, that kind of thing. So there's all different age groups and that kind of thing. And Myra, my partner, and one of my athletes is actually doing it. She just snatched 195 pounds, which was a lifetime best at 37 years old and 157 pounds body weight. And then she clean and jerk 225. She missed the clean on 235, which would have been a lifetime best. So 195, 225, for a 37-year-old, 157 pound athlete. So pretty solid. And then the actual Metcon was a 12-minute AMRAP of 25 pull-ups, 50 calorie row, 100 overhead squats with an empty bar, 45-pound barbell, 50 box jumps with a 20-inch box, and then another 25 pull-ups. So, anybody who's never CrossFitted before would be able to most likely do that workout. So it wouldn't necessarily take any of the weightlifters out of the competition. But again, what it does is it kind of makes it an all-encompassing kind of deal where a lot of people can kind of sign up. But what we're hoping for is her to be able to win the Masters. And I think she has a really good shot of winning the Masters division for females. But it got me thinking about how, in my preparation for Wadapalooza, how I'm not really focusing on top-end strength anymore, just because, it's this point in my training where I really don't have a need for top-end strength. But where it really is important is CP capacity, being able to do multiple repetitions, that kind of thing. And the fact that I'm never going to be the strongest athlete in the field as is. So why waste time on something that I can actually use my time more wisely and be more beneficial in terms of aerobic development, muscular endurance, and then CP capacity. So it got me thinking of how CrossFitters are continuously getting stronger, even though they're not really doing traditional weight training protocols, traditionally strengthening and conditioning protocols, and even doing this in a long-term basis. So I looked at Garrett Fisher, who's been a high-level CrossFitter for the last, let's say 5 years. He's probably in his late 20s at this point. Clean and jerk, or snatch 319, I want to say, and then clean and jerk 385 at probably about 200 pounds. And probably still at a level in terms of aerobic fitness where he's still, very good in the game. And you think about how this comes about, because he would be a fairly good weightlifter on an American scale if he just did weightlifting, but he's still like a qualifying national lifter while also being one of the metabolically most fit people on the planet. So it starts to. I was kind of like thinking about it the other day of how these athletes can kind of pull this off, and one of the main things is that it's about repetitions of the movement themselves, not necessarily the load, and especially when the load is in that 60 to 70 to 75% range for multiple repetitions, which is pretty much the majority of weightlifting as is in traditional, let's say, Russian templates of progressive overload training. So, it's just done in a different way. So they're getting the reps. They're just doing it a different way. to get them better at weightlifting. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good insight. I mean, it sounds very much like Bondarchuk methods of training. If you're familiar with kind of that old Eastern method of training,
Mm-hmm.
he trained mostly throwers in the track and field sports, but they did a ton of work. But it was all, like you said, in that 70-ish% range, rarely to max, uh, and not a lot of exercise rotation, except at times globally you would move, but there were a lot. They did a lot of snatch variants and things, and but with huge strength gains over time from doing that. And then another thing you could say it was similar to is your average manual labor, right? I mean, nobody doing manual labor hardly ever does 1 rep max lifts or of whatever it is they lift or carry or swing a hammer, but how freaky strong people that just put in that volume of submaximal work can be.
Mm.
So that makes total sense that in CrossFit people are getting strong, probably not so much from the maximal strength work that they comes up occasionally,
Yep.
but from the sheer repetition of submaximal loads.
Yeah.
And you're getting at those high threshold fibers once you knock the other ones out, with repeated demands.
Yep. Yeah, actually, as a matter of fact, because I'm trying to transition more into almost CrossFit type season, I'm right now I'm 6 weeks out from competition. I've been playing around with some just I don't know. I just did it by feel, but I was like, you know what? I need to get these types of reps in, this type of work in. So I'm doing a every minute on the minute protocol for 15 minutes. It varies a little bit depending on the movement, but for instance, I did this with deadlifts. So I did 5 deadlifts every minute on the minute. For 5 minutes at, let's say it was probably about 70% of my max, and then right into every minute on the minute 4 reps at like 75%, and then right into every minute on the minute for 5 minutes 3 reps at 80% of my max. So that would be, let's say, a half-hour training session of like 5s, 4s, and 3s. 5x5, 5x4, and then 5x3, or even that would be like a training session within itself. But the purpose, like when we look at what are we trying to do, what do we need to get better at in terms of the function of the athlete, I'm not here to get maximally strong. I'm here to get very strong and be able to continue to do that continuously, getting the brain prepped, getting that CNS prepped for multiple repetitions. So 5x5, 5x4, and 5x3 done in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So I did this for deadlifts. I did a variation of it for push presses, and I believe I did it, and that was pretty much it. But then I did like kind of a different version of it for clean and jerks, where I did sets of 5s, sets of 4s, sets of 3s, sets of 2s, and then singles. Kind of same idea. I did 3 minutes for 5s, 3 minutes of 4s, 3 minutes of 3s, 3 minutes of 2s, 3 minutes of 1s, and then increasing the load from there. So just getting as much volume as I can in under incomplete rests, basically.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So trying to, and again, the reason behind what I kind of do is because I'm trying to refine movement patterns still. I'm not really trying to test. So I look at a lot of other training programs and a little other, just philosophies in general. At some point, you've got to actually do some real CrossFit type stuff. So like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, rope climbs and heavy clean and jerks or something like that. But I'm like, what do I need to particularly work on? Like I could smash through that and my technique won't be the greatest, but I'm trying to maintain decent to good technique so that I can actually maximize my performance, because I can't get away with crappy technique just because of my maximal strength relative to the field. Mm-hmm. So me personally, that's kind of something that's a mashup. And again, I've never really seen something like this before. It's just me kind of going off of feeling, off of my gut, and just seeing where it goes.
No, I think that's pretty brilliant. Identify that. I mean, your gains are going to come from technique that carries you further, not from max gains, right? I mean, because at some point we get relatively near our ceiling, or at least our ceiling, without putting on a ton of weight that would take away from a lot of other things.
Mm-hmm.
Or, investing all of our training energies to that one specific goal. And again, if we get worse at everything else, then, so you probably do have big area you could still improve, in regard to that. And I like that principle a lot. reminds me a little. I played with one time I was I think it was 6 10-minute EMOMs was the same exercise. I think picked 6 exercises, kind of whole body, but it was all squat, push press, dead, probably
Mm-hmm.
weighted chin, and I don't know, pick a few more. But I did the same 3 reps every minute on the minute for 10 minutes of one. I had everything loaded up and warmed up, and then I
Oh,
just
good. Okay.
immediately the next minute I moved right into the next exercise. And it is still enough rest doing triples like that. You can set stuff up and get things ready
Mm-hmm.
a little bit, in your rest breaks. But that was actually kind of a nice session. Good aerobic. It was never super intense, but it felt like I got a lot of quality work in.
Mm.
Um, I think I used it in a aerobic base building where I was trying for that kind of, alactic aerobic mix, basically.
Yep.
But yeah, sort of sounds similar, I guess, in a little ways.
Yeah. Again, like I think just basing upon what we're seeing more objectively from some of the higher level athletes, you look at their training protocols, they're still getting stronger in their maximal efforts, but they're not putting in maximal effort, like not heavy work. It's like all submaximal work, and trying to get as much volume of that as you can. And obviously, when we just look at the principles of what the stimulus or what's actually happening physiologically, we're looking at neural connections going on. We're looking at technique refinement. Is there some strength hypertrophy type stuff going on? Maybe. But again, I think when we look at especially the high level movements, it's more of the fact that are you able to move the bar with good technique and good speed in order for you to actually stand up with the weights and that kind of stuff. And then
Mm-hmm.
from there, even you can, if you wanted to go to maximum, the biggest thing is your CNS ready? And just judging off of athletes, especially when they come off deload and that kind of stuff, you see that they hit the stick point and they freaking blow through it. They're like, ah! And then you see the people who are just crushed, like, their CNS is just down and they get to that point like, nope. And then you kind of, again, through enough repetitions and through enough coaching, you kind of see like, all right, this person is not ready for that, but maybe they are ready for aerobic work. And that's actually one of the things that I'll bring up next is the fact that some people are so high on neuromuscular efficiency that they actually can't really get adaptations through the sport because their nervous system is so fast and they go so deep so quickly that they can't actually access enough volume in order for them to make adaptations with what the sport is asking for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's where the sport doesn't necessarily favor the really fast, really powerful, very fast twitch dominant explosive athletes. Really, they burn out too quickly, and it's too difficult to develop the base that's needed. Or it has to be, if it is done, you have to work at a intensity that would seem to be fairly low,
Yep.
certainly lower than most, in order to actually get better. What you need to get good at to sustain and output in anything longer.
Yeah, yeah. Like when I looked at all the training protocols or some of the faster, more powerful athletes, they can't go hard. So like it's all submaximal work, it's all Z1 or around the world work, but that actually isn't getting them better at the sport. It's getting that part of it. Like the support system is better, but you got to be able to train the sport. So
Mm-hmm.
I know this is something that James Fitzgerald was doing with a guy like Danny Nichols. Like his training didn't start until his CNS was blown.
Oh, I might have lost you there.
Yeah, I'll say that again. So, like a guy like Danny Nichols, who was being trained by James Fitzgerald, his training didn't start until basically like his neuromuscular efficiency was turned off. You know what I mean? Like they had to depress
Mm-hmm.
him in order
Yeah.
for him to actually start doing the sport, which is
Yeah,
crazy
tone
because
everything down. Yeah.
yeah, because
Yeah.
when you look at the opposite side of the spectrum, you look at a guy like Rich Froning, and it's his performance on the first couple days, maybe 2 days of the CrossFit Games were never as good as his finishes. And I was talking to Ian Kaplan, a
Yeah.
person who I train and also who's into strength and conditioning as well, is that it's almost like because of Rich's natural physiology and his natural training, he never goes hard. So that what happens is there's always that workout on Friday that forces you to basically go lactic. That's his
Mm-hmm.
first lactic session of the year. And by Sunday, he's already adapted to that stimulus. And then on Sunday, he can go. That's insane.
Yeah.
Like I used to think before, I'm like, oh, he just lasts longer than everybody else. But even like throwing this factor in there, it's like, well, maybe that lactate effort he did on a Friday actually prepared him for Sunday.
Yeah, it's like the perfect storm, and that's why, the dominance for all that time. But yeah, just a massive aerobic capacity to recover when others shut down. But like, yeah, that might be, like you said, the first thing that really get enough lactate in the system to use as fuel. I mean, I
Yeah.
do remember watching 2012 games I was
Yep.
at, and I watched everything. There was an event out when they still went down onto the track,
Mm.
and it was some sort of a big heavy sled, kind of like a football sled push kind of
Yep.
thing. I think you had to like push it like maybe a quarter of the way down the field and then run back and climb a rope,
Yep.
maybe once or twice. I don't remember. Then run back, push it another quarter of the way,
Mm-hmm.
so you've covered the field eventually. But uh, he was definitely struggling on that push. You could tell it couldn't be done without dipping, pretty heavily glycolytic.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the only thing that looked like he was really the whole weekend that I saw where it looked like he struggled, like that system either because they went there. Like I said, I'm almost certain it was a Friday event.
Yep.
Uh, that was an interesting observation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to kind of play around with this protocol a little bit more, and maybe the adaptation from week to week or the adjustments from week to week is actually going to be something like either increasing the weights or maybe even increasing the reps. So like last week I did like 5-4-3, maybe I go 6
Mm-hmm.
5 4 at the same weights. So again, not necessarily trying to push the weight, but trying to push what I can do with the weight. Again, factoring in what I need to actually get better with the sport.
Yeah, that sounds solid. Yeah, I think I would agree. I think probably pushing the reps, not the weight necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, getting volume PRs because again, even
Yep.
if you're doing 15 minutes and you increase the reps by one, that's an extra 15 reps at those those
Yeah,
loads.
that load and then add that up, and it's a significant increase
Yeah,
in work.
exactly. So just think if I'm doing deadlifts with 295, 315, and 335. That's 5 reps at 295, 5 reps at 315, and 5 reps at 335. Not to mention that it's another opportunity for me to kind of neurally groove repetitions at those weights. And again, I think also one of the things that I'm factoring in as well is just the field and the events that I'm prepping for. I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
be doing heavy weights. It's more moderate loads quickly. So again, I think that's important as well because if I was doing, say, an elite competition where the weights were going to be more toward those actual my innate maxes, then I would actually have to do 395 every 30 seconds for as long as I possibly could. Whereas this is actually more in my wheelhouse where I'm actually
Mm-hmm.
doing those moderate weights where they're going to be challenging, which again I think is awesome. Awesome for those types of athletes who aren't elite. It allows them to actually train like an elite athlete because the actual workout would be similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's cool. Yeah, rather than getting thrown in with the elite events where then it becomes just more of a grinder because the loads are
Yeah,
things
exactly.
are
It's just not
so
fun.
it's, yeah, at that point it devolves back to being your average class, your average box, right? Where some people are flying through something and other people are trying to do the same thing, and it's a completely different stimulus.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's what I'm probably going to be doing for the next 3 weeks, and then take a deload, and then the actual peak for the last 2 weeks will be testing similar workouts, and then actually going through some of the workouts, and then that last week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, will be shorter intensity, shorter sessions, but keeping the intensity and trying out some of the workouts. Thursday will be off. Friday will be the competition. So I'm going to kind of test this out, and I'm doing this with a bunch of other athletes that I'm working with, but based upon what we've done in training runs and that kind of stuff, it seems like this would probably be the best way to go. Again, kind of going off of what our, what the text says and what they've done in training, and the idea that like you don't want to be 100% off a deload going into a competition week. You kind of want to have like it's almost like the best week is the week is the feeling you have the week after a deload week because you kind of get
Hmm.
back into it, you get the rust off a little bit, you start to kind of
Yeah,
gain confidence, and then bang, let's get into competition.
yeah, and I think there has to be a ramp up or things to prep and touch. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Otherwise, you just be flat.
Yeah,
Some
exactly.
of the
So
tension is out of the muscle. You get your sympathetic system.
yeah, exactly. So, all right, Scott. I think that's probably good for today. You got anything
Sympathetic
else?
tone down, and yeah, no, that's solid.
Perfect. Cool.
Yeah, we'll enjoy yourself out west
Yeah,
here.
man.
It's
I'll
kind of
kind of give
different
you
to
a
be on the same time zone.
little view here of what's going on. Not too bad out
Yeah,
there. So yeah,
that is awesome. Yeah,
I'll try to soak in the rays, get a little hike in, get some beautiful San
go up on
Francisco
Mountain.
air here.
Go up Mount Diablo, which is right near there. If you haven't had a chance
All
to do
right,
that,
I'll have to. Beautiful.
yeah,
All right, cool. So
awesome.
I'm Sean LaFlock. You can get me at Sean@CrossFitDiaryBeach.com.
I'm Scott. You can get me at Scott at CrossFitPortland.com.
Perfect, Scotty. All right, buddy. I'll see you next week.
All right, take
Take
care.
care. Bye.
Bye.